That's the kind of client you protect, Judge? A broke nobody with dirty shoes? I hope your bench has insurance. Those words hit the room like a slap. I was sitting right where I always sit, on the bench in Providence Municipal Court. My hands were folded. My robe felt heavy on my shoulders. The lights above us hummed softly. The air smelled like old paper, floor cleaner, and nervous sweat. The man who said it was not the defendant. He was the attorney. He was 41 years old, tall, sharp-jawed, and dressed like he walked out of a shiny magazine. His suit was a deep blue that almost looked black. His tie was perfect. His hair was slicked back like it was glued. He smiled like a person who thinks the world is a game he already won. He looked at the defendant like the defendant was gum stuck to his expensive shoe. The defendant sat at the table with hands that shook a little. He was 33. He wore a faded work jacket and jeans with a small tear at the knee. His boots were scuffed. His eyes were tired, but he was sitting up straight, trying hard not to look scared. Behind them, the court gallery was full. People leaned forward. Some had their arms crossed. Some had that look like they were waiting for a storm to break. I did not raise my voice. I did not slam my gavel. But inside, I felt something turn. Because in my courtroom, nobody gets to decide who is somebody and who is nobody. If you believe justice should be equal for everyone, you'll want to see what happens next. Case in Providence Municipal Court always starts the same way, but that morning I could tell it would not end the same way. The bailiff called out, clear and strong, Case 2026 TR 48119, the people of Providence versus Mr. Eli Navarro. The sound of that case number echoed off the walls like a bell. I looked down at the file. Then I looked at the man sitting at the defense table. Good morning, Mr. Navarro, I said. I'm Judge Frank Caprio. How are you today? He swallowed. Morning, Your Honor, he said. I'm trying. I nodded. I liked that answer. Honest. Simple. I turned my eyes to the other table. And that's when I saw the attorney again. The one with the perfect suit and the sharp smile. He stood like he owned the room. Your Honor, he said. Gregory Vance for the city. Even the way he said his name felt like he wanted applause. I said, Mr. Vance, good morning. He grinned wider, like my calm voice was a joke. Then I looked back at the defendant. The charge was serious, but not the kind you see on big TV shows. It was a traffic case, a small case on paper. But I've learned something in life. Small cases can carry big truth inside them. This case was about a hit and run in a parking lot, a scraped bumper, a broken tail light, and a person who could not afford to fix it. The victim was in court, too. A woman sat in the first row. She held a folder in her lap like it was a lifeline. Her name was Marisol Grant. She was 56 years old. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her hands looked rough, like they had worked hard for a long time. She worked as a night custodian at a middle school. She cleaned floors and took out trash while kids slept at home. She came to court because her old car was the only way she could get to work. She was also taking care of her grandson, a little boy with asthma. She told the clerk earlier she needed her car to pick up his medicine. When I glanced at her, her eyes were watery but proud. Mr. Vance turned and looked at her. Then he looked back at me with that same smile. Your Honor, he said, the city takes hit and run very seriously. This defendant struck Ms. Grant's vehicle and left. Then he tried to avoid responsibility. He let the word responsibility hang like he was teaching a lesson. I leaned forward slightly. Mr. Navarro, I said, tell me what happened in your words. Eli took a breath like he had been holding it all morning. I work delivery, he said. Not a big company, just gigs. I use my own car. That day my brakes were acting weird. I was pulling into the lot and I felt the car slide. I tapped her bumper. I got out. I looked. I panicked. I thought I'd lose my job if the app saw a report. His voice cracked on the last part. I left. I shouldn't have. I know that. I looked at him for a long moment. He was not trying to be slick. He was not trying to be funny. He was scared. Mr. Vance made a small laugh under his breath. Not loud, just enough for people nearby to hear. I raised one hand. Mr. Vance, I said calmly, this is a courtroom, not a comedy club. He lifted his eyebrows like he was surprised I noticed. Of course, Your Honor, he said, and his smile did not change. A few people in the gallery shifted. A woman coughed. A man shook his head. I kept my voice steady. Let's proceed, I said. Mr. Vance stepped forward with a smooth motion. Your Honor, the evidence will show the defendant didn't just leave. He also ignored calls, delayed payments, and acted like he could walk away. Ms. Grant missed work for 2 days because her trunk wouldn't close. She lost money. She suffered. I looked at Marisol. Ms. Grant, I said, is that true? You missed work? She nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I clean the school at night. I can't walk there. My grandson, I have to be there for him. I needed the car. I had to pay for tape and a rental for 1 day. It hurt. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. Mr. Vance turned toward Eli. So, he said, a grown man panicked and ran. Imagine that. I watched Eli's face. He looked down at his hands. His fingers were calloused. That's the kind of hands you see from someone who works without rest. The first disrespect moment came fast. Mr. Vance said loud enough for the room, Your Honor, I hope you don't fall for the sad story. People like this always have an excuse. People like this. I did not need to raise my voice to make the room colder. Mr. Vance, I said, be careful with your words. In this courtroom, we speak about actions, not types of people. Understood? His smile tightened. Understood, Your Honor. But I could tell he did not mean it. The case moved into Act 2, the way a storm moves in, slow at first, then all at once. The first confrontation was minor, quick, and sharp. Mr. Vance picked up a photo from his folder. Evidence number 1, he said. Photographs of the damage. He held it up like a prize. The photo showed a dent and a crack on the taillight. It didn't look like a crash on the highway. It looked like a bad day for someone who could not afford bad days. Mr. Vance smirked. Looks like the defendant thinks other people's property is optional. I looked at the photo. Then I looked at Mr. Vance. Mr. Vance, I said, you can present evidence without insults. He spread his hands as if he was innocent. I'm simply describing reality, Your Honor. I turned back to Eli. Mr. Navarro, did you come back later? Did you leave a note? Eli shook his head. No, sir, I didn't. Mr. Vance chuckled again. Shocking. The gallery made a low sound, like a wave. People did not like the tone he used. I moved the case forward. The second confrontation was bigger. It had teeth. Mr. Vance said, Your Honor, it gets worse. The defendant was contacted by Ms. Grant the next day. He refused to answer. Then he sent a message. He pulled out printed pages. Evidence number 2, he said, text messages. He handed them to the clerk, who handed them to me. I read them carefully. One text from Marisol. Please call me. I can't close my trunk. I need my car for work. Then a reply from Eli. I'm sorry. I can't pay right now. I'll figure it out. Then another from Marisol. Please, I have my grandson. Then a final from Eli. I said I'll figure it out. Stop blowing up my phone. I looked up. Mr. Navarro, I said, that last text, that wasn't kind. Eli's face went red. I know, he said. I was stressed. I was wrong. Mr. Vance leaned toward my bench like he wanted to sell me something. Your Honor, with respect, stress doesn't excuse leaving the scene and then acting rude. The city is asking for the maximum fine and a long suspension. Then he did something that made my eyes narrow. He said, Also, I spoke to a friend of mine in the clerk's office. This case should be simple. We can move it along quickly. He smiled like that was normal. I felt the room freeze, because what he was doing was an influence attempt. That means trying to use connections to push a case the way you want it. In plain words, he was trying to pull strings. I kept my face calm, but my voice went firm. Mr. Vance, I said, I don't care who you know. I don't care who you spoke to. You don't bring that into my courtroom. We follow the law and fairness here." His smile flickered for the first time, just for a second. "Yes, Your Honor," he said quickly. Then he added, "I only meant that my time is valuable." I looked at him. "And so is everyone else's," I said, "including Ms. Grant's, including Mr. Navarro's." A few people in the gallery nodded. Eli stared at the table like he wished he could disappear. Then came the third confrontation. This one crossed a line. Mr. Vance turned toward Marisol like he was bored with her pain. "Ms. Grant," he said, "you say you missed work, but you could have taken the bus, right?" Marisol blinked. "I work at night," she said. "The bus stops early, and my grandson—" Mr. Vance cut her off. "Excuses," he said. "Everyone has excuses." Then he pointed at Eli. "And you," he said, "you're lucky she's not suing you in a real court. This is just traffic court, a little slap on the wrist. People like you count on that." "People like you again." I felt my jaw tighten. I leaned forward, slow. "Mr. Vance," I said, "do not talk down to people in my courtroom. Do you understand me?" He gave me a small bow, like I was a king he did not respect. "Understood, Your Honor." But he was not done. He turned back to Eli and said, loud enough for everyone, "Look at you. You can barely afford that jacket. You should be grateful the system even lets you sit here." A gasp ran through the room. That was when the clerk handed me something else, a small envelope. It had been marked and logged as evidence number 3. I opened it. Inside was a flash drive and a printed receipt. The receipt was for a repair shop. It showed payment for Ms. Grant's taillight and trunk latch, paid in full, 2 days ago. The name on the payment line was Eli Navarro. My eyes lifted. Eli looked surprised, like he didn't know the receipt was already in the file. I asked, "Mr. Navarro, you paid for the repair?" He nodded fast. "Yes, sir. I picked up extra shifts. I sold my old guitar. I paid it. I have the shop papers, too." Mr. Vance frowned. "That's not the point," he snapped. He still ran. Then the bailiff stepped closer and whispered something to the clerk. The clerk looked startled. Then she passed me another paper, a note, not from the city, not from the victim, from the court's own records department. I read it once, then again. My heart gave a strange, heavy beat, because the note told me something I had not expected to see in this case file. It said, "Attorney Gregory Vance, previously listed as Gregory Vance, age 16, in sealed juvenile matter connected to case 2001 JV 0942. Linked names, Frank Caprio, witness statement, Providence Youth Center." A sealed juvenile matter means a case from when someone was a kid that is usually kept private. But the note was not giving me details. It was telling me there was a link to me. I stared at Mr. Vance, and suddenly my memory opened like a door. 25 years ago, a teenage boy, a thin kid, angry eyes, a stolen car, a crash, a man hurt, and me. I remember standing in a hallway at the Providence Youth Center. I was not on the bench then. I was helping with a program. I volunteered my time to keep kids from falling into the worst parts of life. I remember a boy who laughed when someone cried. I remember thinking, if nobody stops this now, he will grow into a man who thinks hurting people is funny. I looked back at the attorney in front of me, same eyes, same smile. Now the courtroom was holding its breath, and Mr. Vance had no idea. He walked straight into his own trap, like a man running down a hallway without seeing the wall. He turned to me and delivered what he thought would be his winning line, and that's when the viral moment happened. Mr. Vance smiled wide, showing teeth. He pointed at Eli, then at Marisol, and finally at me. "Your Honor," he said, loud and clear, "this court loves poor stories. You eat them up. But I'm not here for feelings. I'm here for winners and losers. And let's be honest, people like him are born to lose. Some of them should just learn to stay out of the way of better people." 10 seconds of silence followed. It was the kind of silence you can feel in your skin. Nobody coughed, nobody moved, even the papers stopped rustling. Then the gallery erupted. "What did he say? That's disgusting! Shame on you!" A woman stood up and had to be guided back into her seat. I felt my face change, not into anger that yells, into something colder, something steady. I looked at Mr. Vance as if I was seeing him for the first time, and I said very quietly, "Mr. Vance, you just ended your own day." He blinked. "What?" he said, still smiling a little. I took a breath. That was the turning point. Act 3 is where I tell the truth, not just about the case, but about the person who thinks the world is made for him. I leaned forward and spoke in a voice that was calm, clear, and firm. "Gregory Vance," I said, using his full name, "you just called a human being born to lose in a court of law." He started to speak, but I raised my hand. "No," I said, "you've spoken enough." I looked at him again. "Gregory Vance," I said, "you wear a fine suit, you speak fast, you act like money is proof of worth. But you know what I see?" He swallowed. "I see a man who thinks respect is something you buy, and that is not respect." I turned to Eli. "Mr. Navarro," I said, "you made a mistake. You left the scene. That matters. But you came back the right way. You paid. You owned it. That matters too." Then I turned back to the attorney. "Gregory Vance," I said, "you didn't hit anyone's car today, but you hit something else. You hit dignity. You hit the idea that people are equal." I let those words sit. Then I asked him hard questions. "Gregory Vance, do you think Miss Grant is less than you because she cleans a school? Gregory Vance, do you think Mr. Navarro is less than you because he delivers food and struggles to pay bills? Gregory Vance, do you think I'm here to pick winners?" His mouth opened. No sound came out. I continued. "You said, 'This court loves poor stories.' Those were your words. You said, 'People like him are born to lose.' Those were your words." I repeated them again, slower, so the room could taste how ugly they were. "Born to lose." Then I leaned in a little more. "Gregory Vance," I said, 25 years ago I met a boy who laughed at pain the same way you did today." His eyes widened. I watched his face go pale, like the color drained out. "I wasn't on this bench yet," I said. "I was helping in a youth program. A kid came in after a stolen car crash. Someone got hurt. The kid laughed. He called the victim weak." Mr. Vance's hands tightened into fists. I said, "That boy's name was Gregory Vance." The gallery went quiet again, but this time it was a different quiet. It was the quiet of truth landing. Mr. Vance whispered, That was sealed." I nodded. "It was," I said, "and I'm not here to spill private details. I'm here to explain why your face looked familiar when you mocked people today." I held his eyes. "Because some people change," I said, "and some people just get better clothes." I turned my gaze to Marisol. "Miss Grant," I said gently, "you are not a poor story. You are a grandmother doing the hard work of love." Her lips trembled. I looked back to Eli. "Mr. Navarro," I said, "you are not born to lose. You are a man who made a mistake and tried to fix it." Then I faced the attorney again. "Gregory Vance," I said, "you are an officer of the court. That means you have a duty to act with respect. In simple words, you are supposed to help justice, not poison it." I paused. "In my courtroom," I said, "no one gets to be called trash. Not the custodian, not the delivery driver, not anyone." The moral lesson was clear, but I had to make it real. "Privilege," I said, "is like standing on a high step. It's easier to see the world from up there, but if you use that height to spit on people below you, you don't deserve the step." Mr. Vance stared at me, stunned. And then Act 4 arrived, where the court stops talking and starts doing. I looked down at the file again. "Mr. Navarro," I said, "you are responsible for leaving the scene. That is serious. But you also paid for repairs in full. You took extra shifts. You made it right." I glanced at Marisol. "Ms. Grant," I said, "your damage is covered. Your lost work matters too." Then I sat up straight. "Here is my sentence," I said. I announced it in stages, so each part landed clean. First, the money. "Mr. Navarro," I said, "you will pay a financial penalty of $350 to the court. That covers the legal fine for leaving the scene. You will also reimburse Ms. Grant $180 for the one-day rental and supplies she paid out of pocket. Total, $530. Eli nodded, eyes wide. Eyes. Yes, sir, he said. I continued. Second, the license. Your license will be suspended for 45 days, I said. However, I will allow a work-only permit after 15 days. That means you can drive only to work and back, and only for medical needs for your household. If you break that rule, the full suspension returns. He swallowed hard. Thank you, Your Honor, he said, voice shaking. Third, community service, tied to the offense. Community service, I said, is work you do to give back. It's not fun, it's not a photo moment, it's a lesson. I looked at Eli. You will complete 80 hours, I said, at the Providence Safe Streets Garage, a city program that helps low-income drivers fix safety issues like brakes and lights. His eyebrows lifted. You will do it on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for 5 weeks, I said, and 2 weeknights from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. for 3 weeks. You will check in with the supervisor, Mr. Dennis Hale, and you will submit weekly signed logs to the clerk. Eli nodded. I can do that, he said. Then I turned to the part no one expected, because the worst behavior in my courtroom that morning did not come from the defendant. It came from the attorney. I looked at Mr. Vance. Gregory Vance, I said, stand up. He stood, stiff. What you did today, I said, was contempt. Contempt means you showed open disrespect for the court and for the people inside it. He started to protest. Your Honor, I held up my hand. No, I said. You mocked a victim. You insulted a defendant. You tried to suggest influence. Then you told this courtroom that some humans are born to lose. I paused. In my courtroom, we do not allow that poison. Then I gave the special conditions. Gregory Vance, I said, you will do 120 hours of community service. His eyes flashed. Excuse me, he said. I continued calm. You will do it at the same Providence Safe Streets garage, I said, but not as a helper who talks, as a cleaner. You will sweep floors, take out trash, and wash the waiting room chairs. I watched his face twist. You will report every Tuesday and Thursday from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. for 10 weeks, I said. You will be supervised. If you are late once, the program reports it. Then I added public accountability. You will write a handwritten apology, I said, to Ms. Grant and to Mr. Navarro, 1 page each, not typed, handwritten, because when you write with your hand, you feel it. His jaw clenched. You will also record a 60-second PSA, I said, approved by this court, to be played at 2 local high schools during assembly. In that PSA, you will explain why respect matters and why no one is born to lose. The gallery murmured. Some people nodded. Mr. Vance's face turned red. He said, This is ridiculous. I'm an attorney. You can't treat me like... He caught himself, but not fast enough. Like what? I asked. Like a person who has to follow rules? Then I said the words that made the bailiff shift his stance. Gregory Vance, I said, you are also in contempt right now. He scoffed. And that was the moment I had to protect my courtroom. I nodded once to the bailiff. The bailiff stepped in. The sound of his shoes on the floor was heavy. Mr. Vance backed up. Wait. The bailiff took his arm. Handcuffs clicked, metal on wrist. The whole room watched. Mr. Vance's perfect suit wrinkled at the elbow as he resisted just a little. I kept my voice steady. Gregory Vance, I said, you will spend 48 hours in custody. You will have a review hearing on March 2nd, 2026, right here in Providence Municipal Court. If you show real understanding, I will consider reducing the remaining service hours. If you show more arrogance, we will add consequences. He stared at me like he could not believe it. I looked him straight in the eye. I can believe it, I said, because I've seen you before. The bailiff led him away. The gallery parted like water. Eli sat frozen. Marisol covered her mouth with her hand. I turned to Eli and Marisol. Ms. Grant, I said, your money will be reimbursed as ordered. If you have trouble collecting, you come back. She nodded, tears falling now. Thank you, she whispered. I looked at Eli. Mr. Navarro, I said, I'm holding you to this plan. You don't just say sorry, you live sorry. You live better. Yes, Your Honor, he said. Act 5 is the aftermath. And I chose the transformation path Because life is not just about punishment, it's about change. 3 months later, I saw a report on my desk. Eli Navarro had finished every hour at the Providence Safe Streets garage. The supervisor wrote that Eli showed up early, stayed late, and learned how brakes work so he could keep his own car safe. He also helped other drivers understand basic checks. Marisol Grant sent a short letter. She wrote that her car was running again. She wrote that Eli had also helped her carry groceries one day when he saw her outside the pharmacy. Then there was another report. Gregory Vance. The first 2 weeks were rough. The supervisor wrote, he complained, he acted above the work. But then something changed. Week 4, he stopped talking, he listened. Week 6, he apologized without being forced. Week 10, he asked how the program helps people. And the high school PSA? The school counselor sent a note. She wrote that some kids clapped after the video ended, not because they liked him, because they liked the message. At the review hearing, Mr. Vance stood in front of me again. His suit was still expensive, but his eyes were different. He said, "Judge, I used to think respect was weakness. I was wrong." He paused. I said people are born to lose, but I was the one losing my humanity. I did not smile. Not yet. But I listened. Final scene. The court emptied. The bailiff shut the door softly. The buzz of the lights returned. I sat alone for a moment with my hands folded again. I thought about how easy it is to laugh at someone who is already struggling. It's like kicking a person who is down. It doesn't make you strong, it makes you small. Justice is not about picking winners. It is about seeing every person as a person. In Providence Municipal Court, I've learned this. A mistake can be repaired, but cruelty takes deeper work. And if you want to know what kind of person you are, don't look at your suit. Don't look at your job title. Look at how you treat someone who has nothing to give you. That's the test. And in my courtroom, we take that test every day. My final line is simple, because truth does not need fancy words. No one is born to lose, but anyone can choose to respect.